Hi, I'm Curt Doty with RealmIQ, my AI consultancy, and this is our podcast, RealmIQ Sessions, where we talk about everything AI with international AI leaders and AI founders. Please give us a follow or subscribe. And today's guest is Seth Hallen, an AI and media tech investor and a media and entertainment technology industry leader, as a member of the Television Academy and the past president of the Hollywood Professional Association. His advocacy is taking AI to new levels, and he's committed to supporting AI in media tech startups, helping them secure funding, further develop their product roadmaps, gain visibility, and build essential connections. He is a connector for sure. So welcome, Seth. So glad to have you on our show.
Thank you, Curt. Happy to be here.
Great. So I've been following you for years. We've been connected for a decade, I think, on LinkedIn. I'm a former Hollywood guy. You're in the thick of Hollywood, and you have an interesting position because you have years of experience in the production side and the executive side in Hollywood. And you've been an advocate, thankfully, for the adoption of AI in Hollywood. And you've clearly articulated many of the reasons why it's been slow to happen, but also are promoting the fact that it is happening now. So I'd love to ask you to elaborate on your kind of evolution and understanding and advocacy of AI, certainly within the film or media and entertainment industry, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I am in the thick of it. I live in Hollywood. I work in Hollywood, and I love the town of Hollywood and the industry that's known as Hollywood. And AI certainly has taken the industry by storm. In a sense, it's become the top headline. It's become the main topic of discussion, and has certainly caused a lot of emotional reaction to it, whether you're excited about it or you're afraid of it. It's definitely been a very heated topic. And I just like to think that, and we can get into this more, AI, as far as I've observed, and I've done a lot of deep dives in it and have had the pleasure of interacting with a lot of super smart people that really understand it and are now using it. It's just the next chapter of technological evolution that is not really unlike every other chapter since the beginning of the film industry. And this is just the next one.
Yeah, I did read your 4-part article on this, and I've written a lot about the history as well. And so we relied on all those things. But yeah, so take the talkies going into, the silent film era going into the talkies,
Right.
I like to tell the story of, there was a small orchestra, or at least an organist or a pianist in every theater across the country that would play to those silent movies. And when the talkies came around with a soundtrack on it, a music track, all those people were suddenly unemployed. And there were suicides, it was really a crisis, but Hollywood marched on and created new jobs, right? In sound engineering and, new technology of how to do all that with the movies. So they weren't just talking, they were like, full on, productions with music and voice. So that's just one example.
But I fully agree. And there's so many of those. But even if you zoom out outside of entertainment and you just think about humans and technology in general, I mean, ever since, I guess, the invention of the wheel and going all through, every iteration, I like to talk about, the mechanization of agriculture in the late 1800s and how, the human beings had to pick everything. And then all of a sudden these machines were engineered to do a lot of the heavy lifting of picking corn or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And of course, you needed a lot less pickers, but actually I think the study shows that there were actually 4 to 5 times more jobs after the mechanization of agriculture, because maybe you didn't need as many pickers, but you needed people to sort the corn, and then you needed people to work on the machines, build new machines, fix the machines. There were all sorts of new tasks that required literally just kind of redefined jobs. And that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about replacing people. I don't believe that at all. I do believe, just like every technological turning point in this industry and out, that tasks get replaced. That's why we build tools and technology. It's to automate and the tasks that usually are the mundane, repetitive, manual tasks that we don't like to do in the first place. And there are roles that were created that may be focused on that group of tasks, that if those tasks are replaced by machines, then that role might not be needed anymore. But again, no different from anything that's happened in our business through the years. And what always happens is there are new roles and there's new opportunities and people learn to do new things. And that's always how it works out. And that's no different this time.
Yeah. I mean, think back to the Gutenberg press and typesetting and, and the computer. And it's like, yeah, who wants to type the old way? The newspapers certainly don't. So yeah, it's just the natural evolution. But AI in film has been very controversial. And you're right. I don't think it's displaced jobs yet. And the hesitancy and the fear has been around certainly the acting portion of it. Will avatars of actors replace them and, lost revenue? That's a guild and union issue that maybe got worked out in the final contract. I'm not sure, and then the other is writing, screenwriters, IP around properties. And, there are finally some cases reaching fruition with some of those judgments on, can you copyright something that was worked on by a human using these tools? And, so that's an ongoing battle, but yet the world is using all this stuff and Hollywood is slowly embracing it. I think the thaw is happening. And can you tell us a little bit about that thaw that's happening and what movements do you see in Hollywood that, starts to embrace this?
Yeah, I love this topic. And I'm in the camp that machines, AI in our foreseeable future will not replace the real essence and core of human creativity. I think that, take writers, for example, and writing, there's something about human experience and human imagination and inspiration that is really uniquely human, and that those human and emotional experiences that humans have are the inspiration for amazing creative works. And I don't see machines in the near future being able to replace that. I think they can be amazing co-pilots and amazing assistants for that, and can speed up some of the conceptualization processes in a creative process. But I don't see it really replacing the core essence of creativity across the board: acting, writing, any sort of creative work. Again, a lot of what AI can do looks a lot like creativity, and it's shockingly good, and it is very useful. I mean, it is creative in ways, and it can help creativity.
It wants to be creative.
It sure does. But I think what's happening, and this is where technology's always played a role, is it elevates human output and human process and human things like human creativity. And I think we're on another chapter. I think it's going to, again, unleash and unlock and elevate humans to the next level. So I'm seeing that, to answer your question. There are an amazing community of filmmakers and storytellers and creatives that are using these tools to help create visual stories. I mean, what are visual stories? Visual stories are, you have a storyteller that has this image, this vision, this sequence of visualizations in their head that they want to recreate on some sort of form of media so that other people can experience that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. And I like to talk about how that started in the caves with the cave paintings. And in fact, I'm doing a presentation on that next week at HPA, but that's really the essence. And all these AI tools are doing is helping enable storytellers that have these visions in their head, get them out in a form that they can share. But that essence of that, the creativity and the story itself is coming from the human. And these tools are just helping them get that again into a media.
Yeah. So I appreciate the fact that Hollywood's finally embracing it, because I'm a firm believer, and I've written a lot about this, is that human-centered AI and further than that, creative-centered AI is where the technology will reach the next level, because I am very interested that in the hands of a seasoned film editor with 30 years experience and a heck of a filmography takes advantage of these tools and uses them as tools. And what fantastic results are they getting, because they have a lens and experience in storytelling and editing. Editors are the ones that tell the final story of the picture. It's not the director, right? Even though the director has final cut, but it's really that editor. So, how are, they using these tools to be more efficient, because there's a downward pressure on budgeting and for films, the whole Marvel thing, I don't know how long that's sustainable. And so I'm interested in, where will there be a proliferation of new films and independent films with aspiring filmmakers having access to these tools, not only to do pre-visualization, but help in editing and writing, so it gets something to market, or at least to the festival circuit, right?
I do think so. I do think that we are on the cusp of a new chapter of independent storytelling, independent filmmaking, long form content that will be consumed by mass audiences. I think that's a really good thing. I think that the barrier to entry to be able to tell visual stories has been pretty high, and I think that this technology is helping enable a new generation of storytellers and a new generation of consumers and audiences to enjoy those stories. I think there's another aspect to it, not just the tools that help create the pictures and the sounds and the music and all of those things more efficiently, but I think there is an aspect to this, which is the framework to be able to engage with fans, to build audiences, to monetize that content. We're also, I believe, on the cusp of the next generation of that kind of technology that will help really enable the storytellers in a meaningful way to essentially earn a living telling those stories in a different way and in a meaningful way. And I think that the traditional streaming structures and distribution and studios will obviously continue to play, an enormous role, as they always have. But I think that in a few years from now, the world looks a bit different, and I think better across the board for everyone.
Yeah, I think with certainly the rise of YouTube in the living room, the TV being the main platform now that YouTube is experienced in, how the creator economy is now infiltrating into the Hollywood economy, coupling that with the advantages of the use of AI and the low-hanging fruit of marketing. All of a sudden, marketing budgets plunge, and there's an efficiency and a reach that can be done with, one person, not a team, maybe not within the studio, or maybe one person within the studio, so that type of opportunity, little disruption, I think will be fascinating to watch, because, I don't know if you agree with me, but Hollywood has been bloated. They've gone through a number of layoffs over the years with, consolidation and mergers, acquisitions. That'll
Yeah, I think that's driven by the economic disruption. You mentioned my article series. I focus a lot on that economic disruption. I think bloated, is a word that, you could use. I think that connotates that there was needless, unnecessary spend that happened. I think that the spend that led to the bloating, was necessary at the time. But what happens when, obviously industries and supply chains get disrupted by new economic models where the incumbents can't catch up and adapt in time, then there is a lot of excess spend because the revenues go away and therefore, and we've been seeing a lot of those adjustments in the industry. And I do think that the economic sort of system of traditional film and television creation and distribution and monetization is ongoing. Absolute fundamental transformative change at the moment, and it needs to adapt in an enormous way, in a truly
meaningful way.
Oh yeah,
and that disruption didn't happen because of AI.
No.
Yeah.
If anything, AI is going to help with all of those core challenges, which, to your point, had nothing to do with AI.
Yeah.
Other than, you could argue, I kind of rethought that for a minute. I think the only exception to that AI hasn't caused these problems is companies like YouTube and TikTok for many years have adopted AI powered recommendation and, fan engagement technologies to really dial it in, and then use also those recommendation engines and related technology to serve very specific set of advertisements to those consumers almost on a personal basis, and have been able to monetize that significantly. So therefore taking tens and tens of billions of dollars per year out of what used to come to the traditional linear television advertising industry. So
television's going through some things.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And again, we have to look at these core economic disruptions to really understand what the problem is, and then figure out how to fix them.
Yeah, I see them less as problems. I see them as opportunities. And what can you learn from
Great
YouTube? Point. The people who are watching YouTube, they don't mind pre-roll. They don't mind mid-roll. They don't mind end roll. And they don't mind, little bits of prompts happening over the content that they're watching. They don't mind short form content. And it's like, okay, that is pervasive. And what is Hollywood, learning from that? And I think they're starting to put full movies up now on YouTube. I forget which studio just announced that. Maybe it's Warner Brothers. I forget. But yeah, so it's an interesting shift. TV's in the crosshairs, certainly. People love movies. I'm a former Universal creative exec. So, the line there, and I was in home entertainment. So the line there was, people love movies, no matter what device they're watching it on. There is this love of movies, and that will never end. I believe that. So, I believe that Hollywood does have a future, but they got to get with the program in terms of these new technologies, new opportunities, new reach, new types of engagement. And, I've been in the interactive content space for over 10 years, and I love that. And I think new experiences, new engagement, this is what people want. And that's what the new generation wants, because that's how they're experiencing content on TikTok, on YouTube. So it's just tapping into what's already happening. If you're not analyzing user behavior to alter your product roadmap, right, you're ignoring a major factor in how you're relevant in the future.
Fully agree, and I love talking to you about this stuff, Curt, because you're dead right. It's tremendous opportunity. These challenges, there's always opportunity in challenges, and this is an enormous challenge that also has equally as enormous opportunities across it. And to your point, television is going through a challenging moment. And again, television never had a problem until what? Until when?
Well, until Netflix said, we're going to drop the whole season right now.
Well, And that was part of it. But really, and it was the streamers, because the television show was conceived as a sponsor-driven program.
Colgate.
I mean, that was what it was all about. It was, that's where the soap operas come from, because they would sell soap, during these shows. And it was, for years and years and years, and you and I are probably the same generation. I mean, we grew up, there was commercials. That's just the way it was. There was 22 minutes of programming in a 30-minute show, right? Because the rest of it was commercials, and that was just the way things were. And there were commercial breaks, and you would go grab a drink or do your thing. But what happened is, there was this all-you-can-eat model. Everybody gets used to no commercials anymore. And now if there's a thing with a commercial, you get irritated by it. We never used to. But the problem with that is it was absolutely fundamentally necessary for the economics to have that commercial revenue. The streaming all-you-can-eat model is extremely difficult to make.
Become extinct now.
Right? That's right. And now we're going back to, the sort of traditional model where there's television, shows with commercials, and that's driving revenues. I mean, it does need to go back to that, because the economics of all these very expensive shows just can't, sustain in that way.
Yeah. We also came from a generation where a TV show was 26 episodes, right?
That's right.
And there was a whole ecosystem around pilot season, right? And all the
fully dialed in,
all the den hovering. What are they? The stage moms bring their kids to Hollywood, rent a condo, and cast them and try to get cast in some of the new TV shows that are happening. I don't know if that's happening anymore, but it's just a huge cultural shift in terms of that whole ecosystem and process and world of television and syndicate. Yeah. What happened to syndication, right? Like that was when a TV show could really make money. It was like, hey, hit your 100 episodes, right?
And the writers and the actors and everyone else.
All those checks that would come in, right? And, I think, Matthew from Friends, who just recently passed away tragically, I think he was still making maybe $6 million a year just from Friends, right? So, and then you talk to other actors who are in Netflix series, and they say, yeah, I got like a day rate and no residuals. But I think Netflix is going back to kind of that performance, or going back to a performance model in their compensation. So, there's these models are all changing, and, everyone wanted to be on Netflix till they realized, there's no residuals. And then it's like, so that means like Nicole Kidman has to make 8 movies or series a year with Netflix just to keep her friends employed, which is an altruistic goal. So tell me about some of the events that you speak at and what's happening with the leadership within Hollywood, and are they receptive? This conversation now goes beyond like actors and writers and directors and editors to now the executives within the studio system. How are they embracing it all? Are they fearful, or are they embracing this?
I think my observation is they're embracing it. I think that many are still afraid to talk about it because it's such a hot topic, and there's so much fear still on among certain communities that they depend on, such as the creative segments of film and television. And so they have to be careful about how they talk about it. But I do think that kind of veil of fear needs to be lifted in order for us to really get traction, really embrace it, just put it all on the table, lean in, find a way to make this sustainable, find a way to help it drive more revenues back into Hollywood, and find real sustainable economic infrastructures that enable, again, all of the people involved in the production and post-production supply chain to thrive. And that's why you asked about, these events. And, I've written some articles, and I'm outspoken about some things. And so I'm being asked for my voice to be heard in these rooms. I was recently asked to come. They flew me up to Ottawa, Canada, and I spoke at the Canadian Media Producers Association annual event called Primetime, talking about this. I was at the Silicon Valley Video Summit also a few weeks ago. I moderated a panel at CES 2025. It was a digital Hollywood panel. And then HBA Tech Retreat next week and the Television Academy AI Summit in March. So I'm really trying to work hard to try to see what I can do from my little corner.
Yeah.
Can I move some needles, some minds into thinking about this in a more productive way? Because fear is not productive. Let's figure out sustainable paths forward for all of us, because until we do that, and until people can really speak openly about this, and there's either people that are afraid, or there's people that are afraid of the people who are afraid. As soon as we reduce all of that, eliminate all of that fear, we're still going to be sort of stuck and inhibited, growth inhibited. So
yeah, but I think the creative community continues to move forward. It's really the executive.
Well, that's an interesting discussion that you and I can have. I mean, segments of the creative community are not moving forward.
Okay.
There are segments of the creative community that are very afraid, don't want to look at the tools, don't even want to talk about the tools, and they have really adverse reactions to the word AI. I have very good friends in the creative community that even me, having known some of these people for decades, I can't get them engaged in this discussion, and they trust me otherwise, right? But I can't get them. There are members of, a smaller group that's really leaning into it passionately, and that's good. You always need that. But again, the executives on one hand, I think there are executives leaning into it. I think overall, the executives are trying to figure out, really how this can benefit them. But again, in the press and in public, they are very careful about talking about it. So it appears that they're not.
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy. Well, what's interesting when I talk about the rest of the world and the creative community outside of Hollywood, I believe that, AI filmmaking and AI filmmakers, you're seeing a lot of short form content, not as many feature length films quite yet, although it will come. But I believe it's a new art form. And I think there is the path of least resistance for these creators to follow, because if you remember back in the day, and I know you're maybe the same age as me, if not younger, MTV, hello, invented the music video. All of a sudden, it was the coolest thing to work on a music video, be a music video director. So, and it was a short form it was the length of a song, right? All this production and creativity went into making it, viewed 24 hours a day on MTV, kind of a new distribution. And I think we're at the same inflection point with AI, because if we just recognize the fact that it's a new art form versus trying to be AI filmmaking, which is obviously threatening some of the community in Hollywood, but Madison Avenue, entertainment, the music industry, they can full on, and they are starting to embrace this. And I think that's something to watch and see how that influences Hollywood, because it's just a freeway to the open road of creativity and non sequitur type of creativity that can happen in a music video or a commercial for a tennis shoe or, or a basketball shoe. I mean, it's incredible, the opportunity, and it's happening. And I think that's exciting. And I think that's a forum where AI in video can thrive.
I agree. I think I want to pile on to that. I agree with everything that you're saying. I think what's super interesting to me, and I think about this almost every day, and I have the pleasure of meeting a lot of founders, startup founders that are building and interesting technologies, very interesting takes on what the future is. I mean, that's what visionary founders do. They think about a future that doesn't exist yet, and they build to that. And to hear some super smart people and listen to them about what they think is fascinating to me. I do think, as a pile-on to what you said, I think it's situation and a scenario that we cannot currently even conceive of right now. You and I could talk all day long, and I'm not sure we can. It's something like the MTV cable TV sort of example, but it's entirely different.
Yeah.
It's imagine going back into the 90s and trying to imagine YouTube. You couldn't, because so many things had to happen before you got to YouTube. And I
For
think
many years, yes.
for many years, yeah, and no one would have imagined, the YouTube of today, back then, of course, and or Netflix or any of these things. And so, if you think about how that was unimaginable back then, because it didn't happen yet, and so many things had to come before it. What things today can we not imagine, but they're going to be part of our lives, 5, 10 years from now? And that's what I'm super excited about, being on the front lines and helping enable.
Yeah, cutting edge. And I think all of that, there's still storytelling at the core of all that. People like stories. If they're short stories, doesn't matter. There's some type of hook or engagement. Hopefully they can exist within truth, whatever that means today. I'm not getting into politics, but I think immersion, interactivity, storytelling, challenging the norm, challenging the conventions of distribution, new forms of distribution, new experiences. I think that's all on the table. And it just requires big thinkers, creative, out of the box thinkers,
Totally agree,
to imagine that world and how it all comes together, right? In some type of form, some type of platform, some type of new engagement. And I think that's exciting, very exciting, because, there's always been these obstacles to getting a story through Hollywood, right? And it's just like you give up at some point, or they buy a screenplay and it just sits, they sit on it because, we're going to sit on that for 10 years for the right time. It's like, it's just no opportunity. So this is challenging all those traditional ways of getting a story out into the world and empowering a new class, a new generation of storytellers. Maybe they use AI, maybe they don't. Maybe they just use AI to help them, or it's completely AI. I'm not sure, but I'm tracking and watching and watching it happen and supporting it however I can, because I think it's cool.
Yeah, and a lot of what we're talking about today is sort of the traditional Hollywood product, which are, long form scripted narrative film and television episodics. But, I like to think of storytelling broader, and you and I, agree on this as well. When we talk about games, we talk about VR, we talk about live immersive, sort of sphere-like experiences. There's a relatively new experience here in LA called Cosm, where it's, you watch games and other sorts of immersive experiences, but with other people. You're in a room, so you're not isolated inside a VR headset. You're enjoying this with people. So I think those are all other forms of media for storytelling and immersive storytelling and sharing stories and consuming them. And so when we think about how all of these technological advancements could play into all of those areas, and by the way, including music. So any concert you go to, there's tremendous visual storytelling happening along with the artists, whether it's a backdrop or, somewhere on stage.
Or synced on your phone and, it's separate experience,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Connected. The possibilities are there. They're at.
That's right. So really, when we think now about storytelling, I do think we have to look at the much bigger picture, because these technologies will play into multiple sort of forms, media of storytelling.
Yeah. I mean, I was a leader in the format wars between HD DVD and Blu-ray. And so I was
there myself.
Yeah. I was helping invent new experiences of how to interact with movies on your big screen.
Yeah, you were at Universal. They were the HD DVD camp.
Yeah, they were the leader, and I was...
And Paramount.
And Paramount, and Warner Brothers.
I remember that.
Warner Brothers on both sides.
That's right. I remember that vividly.
Oh my God, yeah. But I was worked with Ken Graffio, who was had the coalition of ACDVD. And so I was helping him lead the marketing efforts. And then I was leading the kind of interactive kind of what can you do with this technology in terms of enhancing a movie. And it was all kind of premature. There wasn't a market for that type of engagement, but we were doing really cool shit that, eventually just came onto social media. And, that was happening actually before the birth of touch, actually,
Yeah, but isn't that something? We have this insatiable need to continue to expand and enrich the immersiveness and the experience of stories. I mean, that'll never end. Some of them don't work, some of them do, but it finds its way. And I find that so fascinating, how long, Curt, have we heard about interactive television where you can, shoppable content, real time. I mean, I think I started hearing about that literally 25 years ago, maybe more.
Oh yeah.
But now there are some interesting startups that are leaning into it because, with machine learning and AI that can recognize objects on screen. I mean, you can really map now certain other immersive experiences, whether it's shopping or some other interactive experience in more meaningful ways. So even though that's been attempted for so long and hasn't really caught on, we're at a place where some of those things might.
So, and when I was at university, I was pitched by all those companies because they wanted to be in that space. And the problem was that, buy the shirt that Jennifer's wearing. And then it was like, okay, but shouldn't Jennifer be compensated at a high level for selling shirts now that she wore in a show? And that it was those talent deals that prohibited that technology from moving forward. But now we have fake people. We have synthetic twins and influencers selling shit, right? Holding up products and it looks totally believable. And it's a crazy time for all of that, but and maybe that technology wasn't for Hollywood. It was for, TikTok, when they finally came out. So again, it's finding the right platform, but there is this thirst and desire to innovate. And it's frustrating when you're one of those people who, you're just doing it a little ahead of, the times in which it could be accepted and or the right platform. So, but we persist, right?
Exactly. Yeah, no, I'm fascinated by our insatiable need to continue to improve tools and technology, to tell these stories, to get others engaged, to, create commercial, viability around all of this. And that'll never end. Blame the early humans that lived in caves because they started it. Those were the little twigs and animal fur and things that they used with berry juice to paint and coal to paint those images
that was their PowerPoint, right?
Those were their tools and technology. Absolutely. And it hasn't stopped since. And so it's an exciting time for all of that and can't wait to continue to be a part of it.
Cool. So we're getting to the end of our podcast. I just wanted to give you the opportunity to plug any event or where people can find you and continue to read and listen to your thoughts on the subject.
Yeah, thank you. So the HPA Tech Retreat is starting next week, which is February 17th out in Palm Springs. It is sold out, but there will be, some byproduct coverage on all the things that are discussed there and the needles that are moved in that room, which happen every year. Upcoming in March, there is the Television Academy AI Summit. Unfortunately, it is only for Television Academy members, but that's coming up. And then, of course, we're into NAB season after that and so forth. But for anybody interested in the things I'm writing and the things I'm talking about, the best place is my LinkedIn page, which is just my name, Seth Hallen. Look me up. I think I'm the only Seth Hallen on LinkedIn.
Okay. And you are a unique individual. So thanks, Seth, for joining us. And thanks to all of you for tuning in and catch more of our RealmIQ sessions on your favorite podcast platforms. Please follow and smash that subscribe button. You can also follow us on TikTok and LinkedIn and now Blue Sky, people. Yes, Blue Sky is happening. Thanks again, Seth. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Curt.
RealmIQ. Transform your business with AI-driven innovation.
Subscribe to our Media Slam newsletter and learn more about the intersection of design, content, and technology.
CurtDoty.co. Branding, marketing, and product development.